Right, good morning, everyone. Let's get started. We are going to finish talking about what's going on with the kidneys, and I think maybe it's a good idea to go for a quick review of some of the stuff that we learned last time. Nothing crazy, just quick recap of some of the terms and things like that, so it makes more sense when we go through it today. So we have this question right here in the study guide. I don't know if you have a chance to work through it yet, but let's fill it in together. First, we have the parts of the nephron in the order that the filtrate passes through. Once again, nephron are the functional unit of the kidney. Functional unit of kidney. What does functional unit mean? Functional unit means it it's the smallest unit that is carrying out the function of the kidney, which of course is filtering the blood and producing urine, right? So it has a hollow interior, which is going to be filled with the filtrate. Now, starting at the Bowman's capsule, you, we learned this last class. I'm just filling it in for you to refresh your memory. The filtrate will go to the proximal tubule, and after the proximal tubule, it would go into the loop of Henle, but the loop of Henle has a descending limb, and followed by the ascending limb. Okay, so both the descending and the ascending limb, oops, makes up the loop of Henle. Now, they actually do different things, the descending and the ascending limb, and we're going to talk more about it today. After the loop of Henle, it is going to go to the distal tubule. Distal tubule. Just keep them all capital here. And at the end, we have the collecting duct. Okay, after the collecting duct is the point of no return. There is no more modifications allowed after the collecting duct. You can't add things to the urine. You cannot reabsorb things from the filtrate. After collecting duct is just only one way, right, which is to leave the body. But before it gets out of the body, there are like a bunch of stuff it will pass through. From the collecting duct, it is going to go into the renal papilla, which is like the tip of those cones, right? The tip of the renal pyramid, right? This is the papilla. And outside of the renal papilla, the urine will drip into the minor calyx, followed by the major calyx. It will be helpful if you have a diagram with you as we are going through these things and just kind of trace the path yourself. And from the major calyx, it is going to go into the renal pelvis, ureter, and then urinary bladder. It's going to get filled up, and when it's too full, you will feel the urge to go to the bathroom, and it will come out through the urethra. Okay? Again, nothing's new. We just reviewing, talking. Okay, this one, like people don't really like it because it's so many names, okay? But from the renal artery, it is going to go into the kidney through the hilum. Remember, this is the kidney. This indentation here is called the hilum, and that's where the arteries are going to go in. The ureter is going to come out from there. The veins are going to come out from there. But as soon as the renal artery enters the kidney, it will branch off into multiple segmental segmental artery. The segmental artery travels towards the papilla, and then it's going to go up the sides of the papilla. The vessels that are going up the sides, they are called interlobar artery. And at the outer edge, again, think of a slice of pizza, the crust, that's where you will find the arcuate artery. From the arcuate artery, there are little hair-looking ones that are branching off. Those are the cortical radii artery. Then from the cortical radii artery, you also have like little sideway ones that are branching off. That is going to be the afferent arteriole. And each afferent arteriole will feed into our glomerulus, which is a network of capillaries, right? Inside of the Bowman's capsule. I'll maybe make a quick note here for you. The glomerulus, its blood vessel, is not part of the nephron, but it is inside. Oh, hold on. It is inside. Let's try it one more time. It is inside of the Bowman's capsule. Now, from the glomerulus, where does it go? Whatever is not filtered out is going to leave through the efferent arteriole. And then the efferent arteriole is going to open up into the peritubular capillary, which is always next to the nephron, okay? Which is just next to the nephron. And it allows a rapid exchange of substances between the blood and the filtrate. And I'm just going to switch color here. It is going to go back to the cortical radiate vein. And then you just copy the stuff backwards, right? Arcuate, which means arch, vein, interlobar vein. And then there are no segmental veins. Okay, just skip right to the renal veins. And then from here, it goes to the inferior vena cava. If you want to be really thorough, the renal artery comes from the abdominal aorta. Okay, that's the blood flow. And that's all the stuff we learned last class, sort of, I guess. Any things you want to ask before I Do a little bit more. Just waiting for the snipping tool to come on. Okay, draw it out. I believe that's the best way for you to learn these things. Okay, it doesn't have to be a nice picture, but you draw it out. It will help you internalize it. Okay, there we go. Next, complete the following chart related to urine formation. Now there are three processes, right? We have the filtration. Okay? Filtration is called the glomerular filtration, right? And where does it happen? It only happens in the glomerulus. Okay? Glomerulus, Bowman's capsule. And this one is going from blood to filtrate. We're taking stuff from the blood, squeezing them out of the glomerulus, and all those things that are coming out will be captured by the Bowman's capsule. And that's going to be the filtrate. Remember, there are a lot of good stuff in the filtrate, nutrients that we want to take back, water that we want to take back. And that's where absorption comes into play. So absorption happens at the proximal tubule. 60 to 70% of the filtrate will be reabsorbed. Loop of Henle, distal tubule. I'm just going to do it without the dot. I think it's confusing with the dot, maybe. And the collecting duct. Okay. Basically, throughout the rest of the nephron, and absorption means to take it from the filtrate back into the blood. Sometimes absorption is same as reabsorption, like you're reclaiming it. Okay, doesn't matter, same meaning, right? But the key thing to know is absorption means going from the filtrate back to the blood. Secretion happens at the PT, DT, and collecting duct. There's no secretion in the loop of Henle. And secretion is blood to filtrate. If you miss some stuff in the initial filtering process, if there are some waste product that you didn't get rid of initially, secretion will give you a chance to fix that. All right. Does absorption and secretion happen at the same time? Yeah, it could be at the same time. Yeah. So at the proximal tubule, you could be absorbing glucose and at the same time secreting H plus. Okay. Because they're done by different transporter, right? It's not the same protein that's, you know, moving the same substance, right? Each substance requires a different carrier for it to be transported. So one doesn't interfere with the other. Okay. So last class, at the end, we talked about what happens at the renal corpuscle and the proximal tubules. So let's just fill this in and then we'll continue with the note. Now, in case you forgot, renal corpuscle, corpuscle means bundle. So this is a bundle of glomerulus plus Bowman's capsule. Bowman's capsule. If you read stuff online or in textbook, sometimes they might call it the glomerular capsule. Same thing. So equals to these two things together. Okay, so what happens here at the renal corpuscle? What happens is glomerular. Glomerular filtration takes place. The process, the filtration process, is relatively non-selective. And we're not really picky about what goes out of the blood at this point. And like a bunch of stuff goes out. Okay? We'll fine tune it later. But for now, just get rid of a lot of stuff. Water, nutrients, waste, everybody goes. And we'll sort through the mess later on. And this process is driven primarily by blood pressure. Okay, the blood pressure is much higher in the glomerulus than in regular capillaries. Regular is about 15 to 30. Here we're talking about 60 to 90 mmHg. So high pressure. Think of a leaky hose, right? But then turn the tap all the way to the max. Just gonna shoot all over the place, right? The water. That's kind of what happens here. Now, another important thing is there is no use having high pressure in a system if there is no holes in the walls, right? Nothing can come out if the walls are like impermeable. So the walls of the glomerulus are actually quite permeable. It's leaky, right? Leaky, you can think of it as. However, um, plasma protein, these are relatively big, plus and blood cells remain within the blood. They don't come out. They can't fit. And so you think of the wall of the glomerulus. Right? Like cells would be too big to go through. And then you might have these proteins. Proteins. They wouldn't be able to fit through. Okay? They're like too big. But other stuff, small stuff, okay, like these nutrients, right, water, no problem. They can go through. Okay, water, they can go through. Okay, but not the big stuff. So while water, electrolytes, right, uh, glucose, there's some waste like urea, they are filtered into the Bowman's capsule. The result of this process creates a protein-free plasma. It's like the plasma of the blood minus the protein. Plasma is the liquid portion of the blood, right? Minus the protein. So that's glomerular filtration. Filtration only happens at the glomerulus, nowhere else along the nephron. All right, proximal tubule. Again, when you read textbooks, older ones, they might say proximal convoluted tubules, right? Convoluted is like all twisted up, right? Is that the filtrate? Is what the filtrate? Like this stuff right here? Yeah. So this protein-free plasma is the filtrate. There you go. Okay, proximal tubule. The main thing that happens in the proximal tubule is reabsorption. Reabsorption. Reabsorption, absorption. You're taking it back. That's the key thing. Right? So 60 to 70%, depending on what your body needs, of of this filtrate will be taken back to the blood. Okay. Like I said, lots of useful stuff that we want to keep. The water we definitely want to take back as much as possible. NaCl, all right, glucose, those are important things. So we reclaim them. The process involved both passive and active transport. Right? So you might actively reclaim the NaCl, but water usually follows NaCl because of osmosis, right? We learned about that last semester. And this process is tightly regulated by hormones. How much do we take back? The amount of substances that can be taken back depends on the number of carriers available. So each substance has a threshold level. You can only take up uh you can only take back up to a certain amount. If there's too much, then it will just continue forward. Okay, so carrier is needed for different substances. Okay, you will need one for glucose, you will need one for NaCl, you will need one for potassium. If you don't have a carrier on the proximal tubule for a particular substance, that particular substance will not be reabsorbed. Okay? Like caffeine, I told you. Like uh, certain medication you're taking, like antibiotics, for example, it goes to your blood and then your kidney filters it. You can't reclaim those because we don't have a carrier for those antibiotics. It's not something that's natural in the body, right? And we ended the lecture by talking about regulation of blood pH, that is controlled by secretion of H plus and reabsorption of bicarbonates. Okay. By doing this, you can increase the pH. Okay. If you want to decrease the pH, then you would do less of this. Okay. So right here, these actions help increase pH. To decrease pH, you would just do less of it. Okay? You don't do it. Okay? You want to keep the H plus? Fine. Don't secrete it. Okay? So that's where we left off. Seriously, any question before I go on to today's stuff? It's like really crazy stuff today. And it builds upon the everything I've told you so far. So ask away if you have anything. No? Everybody's happy? Well, I certainly hope so. All right. So after the proximal tubule, where do we go? Where do we go next? Loop of Henle. Yep, the descending limb of the loop of Henle. I suggest you start a new note, right? I'm gonna write quite a bit for the loop of Henle. All right, so here we go. We have the beginning of the nephron. Okay. So you should know by now, Bowman's capsule with the glomerulus inside, which I'm not gonna draw. Then we have the proximal tubule, which you also know. Now, long time ago, right? It feels like a long time ago. Long time ago. Let's go have some nostalgia here. Long time ago, we had this conversation about capillary exchange and all that stuff, right? And I was trying to teach you about where is it? Osmotic pressure. So osmotic pressure is caused by a difference in solute concentration, right? So like the more dots you have, the more solutes you have. And these solutes can be like electrolytes, like NaCl. It could be proteins, right? Could be a bunch of stuff that's dissolved in the liquid. The key thing is These solute is gonna increase the osmotic pressure, and water is gonna move from lower solute concentration to higher solute concentration. Remember I told you like put a spoon of salt in your mouth and hold it, sucks the water out of you, right? So we can represent the osmotic pressure with a number. Okay, so that number is called osmolarity. Osmolarity. Have you guys learned concentration in chemistry yet? Like C equals to N over V. Have you guys learned that yet or no? You don't know what I'm talking about? Chemistry concentration? No, not a thing. No, really? Like C equals N over V? You don't think so? No, okay. Anyway, maybe it's coming. But anyways, not yeah. Some of you saying yes, some of you saying no. I don't know. I'm so confused. Anyways, we can describe the concentration of solution, right? Okay. Like for example, like rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol, it's like 70%, right? Okay. And we can say this acid is, 1.2 molar, right? So on and so forth, right? So like this osmolarity concept is just another way to represent concentration, nothing more. Okay. So to help you understand, this is what we're gonna do. The proximal tubule, we're gonna be absorbing a bunch of water. We're gonna be absorbing some uh, NaCl, maybe some glucose, and we're gonna have some. We still have some solute left here. Okay, some solute left here. And if I have to give it a number to describe the concentration right here, that number is about 400. Okay, about 400. Don't worry about the unit, okay? 400 osmolarity. Okay? And I'm gonna use a highlighter here. If you have it, follow along. If not, doesn't matter. So that's about 400. And this guy is going to go to the loop of Henle now. Okay, it's gonna go and make a turn. We're gonna take a joyride down the descending limb before coming back up like that. There we go. Now I'm also going to put a little dotted line here. Little dotted line. Okay, and if you remember, this is the renal cortex, the outside. And then this is the renal medulla. Do you remember from last class which one is saltier? Which one is like higher in osmolarity? Good guess. I mean, it's only 50-50%, right? Um, it's the medulla. Okay, the medulla has higher osmolarity. Higher osmolarity. Okay, so I'm gonna give it some number, all right? I'm gonna say, let's say this is 600 outside. Here's 600 and 800, 1,000, 12,000, and maybe 14,000 here. The actual number is not too important. The key thing to know is that they keep on going up. It gets saltier and saltier and saltier as we go deeper and deeper into the medulla. I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually the cone, right? The pyramid. Okay. All right. Now, what is next to the loop of Henle? Well, next to the loop of Henle is going to be the blood vessel. Okay, it's going to be the peritubular capillary. Okay, peritubular capillary, right there. And the let me just write it down. Peritubular capillary. Now, the peritubular capillary surrounds like the kind of wraps around the entire nephron, but the portion that specifically go around the loop of Henle has a special name. It's called a vasa recta. Okay, it's just like the special portion that goes around it. And the blood actually flows in the opposite direction as the filtrate. Okay. Now let me just put the 1400 over here so you don't think it's inside the blood vessel. It's actually in the kidney tissue, okay, the interstitium. Um, so let's take a look at what's going to happen. The filtrate, which is the yellow stuff here, is going to go down. It's going to go down here. It's going to travel down. And let me make sure I have the same shade of yellow here. Filtrate, the urine. And when it gets to here, the number, the osmolarity inside is 400, but the outside is 600. Which way is water going to move? Please think about it. Is water going to move out of the nephron or is it going to go into the nephron? We have 400 units of dots, if you would. And outside, there are 600 units of the dots. Okay. Which way will water move? Can we do a poll? I just want to see where your heads are at. Okay. If you think is out, choose A. If you think is in, please choose B. If you're not sure, then choose C. My question is, which way will water move? Water, okay? Not the dots. Which way will water move? Out or in? Okay, right now it's 50-50, all right? Choose more answer, guys. Okay. All right, I can see people are very confused. That's okay. I am confused too. Let's go over here again. Do you remember this picture, maybe? Okay, look, all these purple dots. All the purple dots are solute. Okay. And we have a lot of dots here. Right? So I can give it a number to represent the dots, right? Right? Like what? Let's say each dot is 100, for example. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So this is 1500 units of concentration. Over here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 dots, so 500 units. If the membrane separating the two sides is only permeable to water, which way will water move? I mean, the answer is on the screen already. It's going to get sucked towards the right side because it has more solute, right? As the water goes to the right side, you will dilute the right side. The number goes down, and this gets concentrated until they equilibrate, until they become the same, right? So if the purple dots cannot move, if only water can move, water will always go from lower concentration to higher concentration. So back to our situation here, we have 400 osmolarity inside, 400 units of dots inside the filtrate and 600 outside. What's going to happen? Well, what's going to happen is that the water will move out. Water gets moved out. Okay? So I'm gonna say one here, and I'm gonna put a note here. The descending limb is only permeable to water since the surrounding tissue is, you know what, I was gonna say hypertonic, but I think that's gonna make it even more confusing. Since the surrounding tissue has higher osmolarity, higher salt concentration, water leaves the filtrate. Okay, but listen, I'll let you copy in a bit. Okay, I just want to finish explaining. The water leaves, but then it doesn't stay in the tissue. Because if it stay in the tissue, you're gonna like dilute your kidney, right? It just stays there briefly, and then it's gonna go into the vasa recta, back to the blood. Okay. The tissue is just like a layover, if you would. Okay, it's like a pit stop. Water comes out, and then almost immediately it goes into the blood. Okay. All right, go copy whatever you need. I'll be right back. Keep copying. All right. Now, please tell me what happens to the concentration of the filtrate after it go through this section. Like, is it going to be 400 still? Is it going to be less than 400? Is it going to be higher than 400? What number should I put here? Higher, same, or lower? Okay, I'm gonna do another poll. Okay. A is higher, B is same, C is lower. I'm talking about the number I need to put here. 400, less than 400, higher than 400. What is going on? Please tell me. Okay. Now, when you remove water from this, the purple dots are not going anywhere, right? They're still staying the same, but you have less water now. Right? So whenever you decrease the volume without changing the amount of salt, the concentration goes up. Right? Think about reducing a sauce when you're cooking. As the water evaporates, the sauce gets thicker and tastes like sweeter or something, right? So I'm gonna change this number. This number is gonna go up to 600. Now, you can visualize this with the color. Okay, so now it's more concentrated. All right. Like I don't mean to be gross or anything, but like just visualize the color of your pee. If it's really, really yellowish, then it's really concentrated. If you're really hydrated, drink a lot of water, then the pee comes out like lighter color, right? The pee is the filtrate. And that's what's happening inside the kidney. Okay? And that is why That is why it is important for the renal medulla to get increasingly saltier as we go deeper and deeper. Because if they are all 600, then we're done. We absorb the water initially, and then I won't be able to absorb water any further, right? If they're all 600 outside, I've reached equilibrium. It's already 600. Water won't go anymore, right? But we want to absorb as much water as possible because water is important for our body. And by having a saltier medulla progressively, now I am comparing 600 with 800, and that allows me to absorb even more water. And of course, the water will go back to the bloodstream, to the vasa recta, which is part of the peritubular capillary. And then the story continues. After this, I hope you understand now, it is going to become 800. It's going to be same as that stuff, right? And it's going to be even more concentrated, even more concentrated. Okay? Even more concentrated. But that's okay. The surrounding is higher now. So comparing 800 to 1000, water will still go out. And remember, the sodium is not going anywhere because the descending limb is only permeable to water. Only permeable to water. And then so on and so forth. Okay, 1000 perhaps. And then you will absorb a little bit more. Okay. The point is, as you go down the loop of Henle, the water is progressively being absorbed by the surrounding tissue, and then it goes back to the blood, and then it's gonna be like the most concentrated at the bottom. Okay, your urine should never look like that color. Yeah, you definitely should see the doctor if it's like that. But you get the point. Okay. I'm gonna write it over here. Okay, so that's like the first point, and then the second point is that as filtrate moves down the descending limb, its osmolarity, its concentration increases. And where is it going to be the most concentrated? At the bottom. Most concentrated. So at this point, we have taken back a lot of water. We took a bunch back at the proximal tubules, 60 to 70%, as I said. Now we take back additional water. So what's going to happen to our ascending limb? Okay, so just very quickly over here, I guess. I'll move it there. Ascending limb is only um, ascending limb reabsorb, reabsorbs NaCl, but not water, right? So over here, you're going to be taking back Na and Cl as we go up. And of course, it's going to go back to the blood. So when we absorb the NaCl, we are diluting the filtrate. It's going to be like 800, 600, 400, and eventually the concentration didn't really change, but we have taken back both water and NaCl. So roughly, I would say 10 to 15% of the filtrate uh, that we produce initially will be absorbed here. All right, so 60 to 70% from proximal tubules reabsorbed. Additional 10-15% gets reabsorbed here. We are okay at this point. We have taken back most of the important stuff that we've lost, perhaps. Okay, there we go. I mean, it's not exactly necessarily going to be the same, like roughly 400. If you started with 400 here, maybe 400, maybe 450, it doesn't really matter. The point is, you've taken back the water on the way down, you've taken back the NaCl on the way up. Okay? So this NaCl is going to go into the blood, and and as you can imagine, it's going to be salty blood over here because of the NaCl, but the salty blood is going to help absorb the water on the other side. Okay, so let me just put that down for you as filtrate moves up the ascending limb. Its osmolarity decreases. That's the loop of Henle. Questions? All right, I think we did the difficult part now. Finish it now. So let's take a look here. You can see all the structure of the nephron. We have the descending limb and ascending limb here. And of course, this is the vasa recta. Okay, that's just a blood vessel. And I want to emphasize that for the loop of Henle, the filtrate goes in this direction, but for the vasa recta, it goes in the opposite direction. And the key thing is you absorb water on the way down and you absorb NaCl on the way up. Then it's going to go to the distal convoluted or distal tubule. Convoluted means it's like all twisted up. Right? And then over here, we have the collecting duct. Right? So what happens next? What happens at the distal tubule and the collecting duct? Well, what happens there is tightly regulated by hormones. Okay. So what you take back, what you leave behind will depend on the needs of the body. Sometimes you need more calcium, then you're going to take back more at the distal tubule and collecting duct. These locations is where you will be making final adjustments to the urine. Right? Remember, after the collecting duct, there's no more point. It's the point of no return. There is no more adjustments allowed. It just goes out to the bladder and it will leave the body. Okay. So by the time the filtrate reaches the distal tubule, roughly 80 to 85% of the water and solute have already been reabsorbed. Much of the reabsorption occurred at the proximal tubule, but we were able to absorb even more in the loop of Henle. The longer the loop, the more water and more salt you can take back. Okay, not all nephrons are necessarily the same. Some nephron has longer loops compared to others. Great question. NaCl is actually reabsorbed by active transport. Yeah, so it requires ATP. Next, we're going to look at the regulatory function of kidneys. These drugs, I mean, I don't know if you know anyone or like maybe you yourself have like high blood pressure. But these are common drugs that are used to help lower blood pressure. Okay. And you can lower blood pressure by taking what's called diuretics, which makes basically helps you pee more. By peeing more, you lower the blood volume and you lower the blood pressure. There is other kinds of medication called the ACE inhibitor, and that targets the RAS system that I'm about to show you. Okay, so buckle in. We are in for another long note. Do I have an old one to show you? No, I don't. I deleted all of it. But here we go. Okay, new paper. This was gonna go all over the place. So let me think about it. Let me think about it. Okay, maybe sideways is probably best. We're gonna start here. We're gonna write a bunch of stuff. Okay, we're gonna go down here, and then we're gonna loop back up, and then loop back up here, and then eventually it's gonna go back here, and then we're gonna have some stuff in the middle that that goes all over the place. Okay, it's a flow chart, right? So start on the left, and then just like plan your space accordingly. Um, no big deal if you run out of space. You just I would suggest you writing this flowchart out several times while you're studying anyways, okay? That's the only way to get good at it. Okay. That's what my in-person class have to do anyways. Right? It's not like they have it easy. They are learning the exact same stuff. So this is RAS, RAAS, which stands for renin NGO angiotensin aldosterone. Hey, the good news is at least you guys don't have to worry about spelling too much on the for the online assessment. I don't know if that's any comfort to you. Hey, that's what RAS stands for. Renin, angiotensin, aldosterone, aldosterone system. RAS, purpose. The purpose of RAS of this system is to increase blood pressure. Okay, increase blood pressure. So it helps maintain homeostasis for blood pressure. I'm sure you know normal blood pressure around 120 and 80. That's like the textbook answer, but like I said, it depends on the person, right? Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's slightly higher, depending on the state of the person, their physical fitness, and so on and so forth. But you want the blood pressure to be within certain range. Okay, you don't want it to be too high or too low. Too high is obviously dangerous. You might burst a blood vessel or something. Too low is not good either. You might faint. So here, the RAS system, uh, the point is to increase blood pressure. So let's take a look at here. Okay, I'm gonna draw this, and I want you to tell me what I'm drawing. I hope you recognize this guy now. Okay, we draw it so many times. Okay, do you know what I'm drawing? I'll be a little bit heartbroken if you don't. What is this thing? Oh my goodness. No one. Okay, thank you. Just at the point of despair, someone said the right answer. Yes, this is the Bowman's capsule, and this is the glomerulus, right? Glomerulus. Okay, now listen. The glomerulus is receiving blood from the afferent arteriole. Nothing's new so far. Around this area, around the afferent arteriole, you have a bunch of a cluster of specialized cells. Okay, these stuff has a really long name. I'm gonna write it out first, and I'll explain. Okay, it's called the juxta. Juxta means next to, adjacent, next to. Glomerular, okay, so next to the glomerulus. Apparatus. Apparatus is like a cluster of cells in this context. So we have a bunch of cells that are next to the glomerulus, juxta glomerular apparatus. You can call it JGA for short, I guess. Okay. No one really calls it that. It's not official, but that's okay. And so what does this thing do? These cells will monitor monitor blood pressure, BP, blood pressure, and secrete an enzyme called renin, which is the first enzyme in the RAS system, okay? And secretes an enzyme called renin, not all the time, when BP is low. What triggers low blood pressure? Can you give me some scenario where your blood pressure might be low? Right? It doesn't have to be like complicated stuff. It's just like, regular stuff that could happen to people. Right? That would cause your blood pressure to go down. Yes, bleeding. Very good. So bleeding, excessive bleeding, not like paper cut bleeding, but like, you know, accident kind of bleeding, car accident kind of bleeding. If you bleed, you lose a lot of blood, your blood pressure goes down, right? And also dehydration. Very good. If you don't drink enough water, you get dehydrated, your blood pressure goes down. Okay, so this is the beginning. Remember, we're writing this note. We're gonna make a big loop, come back, okay, and yeah, and then we're gonna see where the story goes. Okay, so renin. If your blood pressure is normal right now, you probably don't have a lot of renin in your bloodstream, and you only release the renin from the JGA when your BP is low. And trigger blood bleeding, dehydration. I mean, there are other causes of low blood pressure as well, but we're not gonna worry about it. We're not gonna write down all the triggers, right? Like allergic reaction, right? Like the anaphylactic shock that I told you about in lecture three, that could trigger drop in blood pressure. Anyways, so blood pressure goes down, renin is released. Let's go to another organ here for a second and see if you know what I'm drawing. So elsewhere in the body, okay, what do you think this is? This guy. Yep, that's the liver. Now, liver makes a lot of plasma proteins, right? Talked about albumin, fibrinogen, prothrombin, all this stuff from earlier units. And over here, we are interested in something called angio. Angio, as in like, like an angiogram. Angio 10, the number 10. Sin, as in when we do bad things, I guess. And then ogen. Ogen means inactive. Angiotensinogen. This is inactive. Okay. Ogen is inactive. Remember, pepsinogen, fibrinogen. Ogen is the inactive version of the enzyme in this case. Okay, so you have angiotensinogen circulating in your body right now, but they're not activated. Okay, unless you are suffering from low BP, in which case you shouldn't be in class anyways. Okay, but if you have low blood pressure, then the angiotensinogen will now get activated by renin. Okay. So you don't have renin unless you have low blood pressure. If you have low blood pressure, the JGA detects it and releases the renin. And then the renin will cut the angiotensinogen, and then it becomes angiotensin. No more ogen, and this is angiotensin number one. Okay, so we need the renin for this to happen. There we go. I just want to move this guy closer. There we go. Okay, let's bring in another organ. See, lots of things working together in the body. I'm sure you know this one is the lungs. And the lungs produces another enzyme called ACE. ACE. So what is ACE? ACE stands for angiotensin converting enzyme. All right, ACE for short. ACE. And again, you have it in your body, it's just floating around, but it's not going to do anything until you have angiotensin number one. And number one, it's going to get converted by ACE into angiotensin number two. This is the final form. All right. So what's the problem right now? What's the situation? What are we trying to fix? What's wrong with the body right now? Why are we turning on this RAS situation, this RAS system? What are we trying to fix? That's right, low blood pressure, right? So how do you fix low blood pressure? Well, to fix low blood pressure, one thing that you can do is, the angiotensin number two is going to trigger vasal constriction. Okay, in other words, it makes the blood vessel thinner, not thinner, narrower. Okay, there we go. So decreased vessel diameter will lead to increased blood pressure. You squeeze the blood vessel. Okay, we learned that in the first lecture. So that will help with the drop in blood pressure, but that's not enough in most cases. Okay, we need to have another uh, countermeasures. You would. So the second thing that angiotensin number two will do is it will travel to another structure. Okay. What's this thing on top of the kidney called? We learned it last class. What is that? That's right. This is the adrenal gland. Okay, so we are focusing on the adrenal cortex. Releases aldosterone. Aldo, like the shoe brand, and then sterone, like testosterone, progesterone. It's a steroid hormone. Okay, so aldosterone is a hormone. Everything else is enzyme. Adrenal cortex releases aldosterones in the presence of angiotensin. Tension number two. Okay, so angiotensin number two does two things, vasoconstriction and trigger the release of aldosterone. Aldosterone. Okay, what does aldosterone do? Aldosterone is going to go to the distal tubule and the collecting duct. Let me try to draw this out. Okay, this is the distal tubule and collecting duct. And next to the distal tubule and the collecting duct, I'm sure you know, or I hope you know, it is the peritubular capillary, right? Would you say blood vessel? But you know it's the peritubular capillary. Okay, so what's happening there? Well, in the distal tubule and the collecting duct, we still have some NaCl. Okay, we took back a lot from the loop of Henle already, but it's still there, right? Remember over here, at the end, it's still like 400 units of solute. So we still have some salt in there. Okay. And so what happens is, under the influence of aldosterone, your body will absorb more NaCl back into the blood vessel. That's the first step. Increase NaCl reabsorption at DT and CT, distal tubule and collecting duct. Okay, sodium and chloride are always together. You absorb sodium, chloride will follow it. Okay, like traffic and weather, they're always together. And after that, following the NaCl, water will also move along. Because as you know, water will get pulled towards the saltier end. So if you take more NaCl here, then water will increase as well. Increase water absorption. Okay, so this is active. This is just osmosis. So with more water coming in, you increase blood volume, which then increase blood pressure. So we fix the problem. Okay, we fix the problem. We are able to help increase the blood pressure by number one, squeezing on the blood vessels, and number two, absorbing more sodium chloride, increasing the salt and the water concentration in blood to increase blood volume and increase blood pressure. So this series of events that are happening to counteract low blood pressure, we call this the RAS system. Your body way of maintaining blood pressure homeostasis. After the break, we'll talk about what happens when the opposite occurs. What if your blood pressure is too high? How do we bring it back down? Okay. So I'll leave the screen on, copy whatever you need. We'll come back in about 5 minutes, okay? 9:45. See you in a bit. All right, here we go. Let's take a look at what happens when you have high blood pressure. I don't know where do I fit this thing now. Um, Hold on. I haven't done this for a while, so it's a little bit messy. But you know what? I guess I'm gonna fit it um right here. Okay, right here. I'm gonna use a different color, right? So let's say we have high blood pressure now. high blood pressure, high BP. And that could be caused by, again, different reasons. Maybe you have too much sodium in the body. Maybe you are chronically stressed. Okay. Then what happens is the heart, the heart, the heart um, actually is going to release another enzyme. Oh my goodness, I can't draw the heart. The heart is going to release, not an enzyme, a hormone, is called the ANP. Okay, ANP. So ANP stands for anti natriuretic protein or peptide. Okay, ANP. Anti is opposite. It goes against. Uretic is like in the urine, and natri is sodium. Symbol for sodium in chemistry is Na, right? Because the Latin name of sodium is natrium. So basically, this is going to be a hormone that lowers um, sodium in the oh, sorry. Is it anti? Oh, I think I just confused myself for a second. Let me just double check. Um, I think it's yeah, okay, I remember now. Sorry, so sorry. I confused myself with another hormone here. It's not anti-natriuretic, okay? Is atrial. A stands for atrial. Let me write that again. So sorry. Atrial because it comes from the atrium. Natriuretic uh peptide or protein. So let me explain this one more time. So sorry. It comes from the atrium of the heart. That's why it's called atrial. It's natriuretic, which means it puts the sodium in the urine. Okay. And it's a protein hormone. So a couple of things it is going to do to kind of help lower the blood pressure. Number one, it is going to block. Okay, whenever we draw an arrow with a line at the end, it means to block it. Okay, we're gonna draw a lot of these later on in the hormone lecture. So we're gonna block the aldosterone. Okay, and at the same time, it is going to actually block the renin as well. Okay. So in other words, the AMP, the atrionatriuretic peptide, is opposite of the RAS. The two systems are antagonistic. That's what they call it. Okay? It work against each other. And by blocking the aldosterone, blocking the renin, you basically shut down this process. Now, more importantly, it is also going to go to the distal tubule and collecting duct, but this time it is going to be completely opposite of what happens here. I'm so sorry. I'm running out of space here, but I'll put it over here. Okay, it will go to the distal tubule and the collecting duct, and it's gonna do the exact opposite. Number one, instead of absorbing the NaCl, it's natriuretic. You put the sodium in the urine. So it's going to increase NaCl, not reabsorption, but what's the word I'm looking for? We don't want to absorb it. We want to get rid of it. What's the word? That's right, secretion. There you go. Increase NaCl secretion. And number two, increase water secretion. because water follows the salt. And number three, you will lower blood volume. And number four, lower blood pressure. Okay. Sorry about the confusion at the beginning, but like, do you understand now? All right. So what happens if this high blood pressure um, situation is not corrected? Okay, like what if your body secretes the AMP and it tries all these things and you're still not able to bring the blood pressure down, right? And if this is a chronic situation, then you have to take medications, right? So one of the medications I told you about is an ACE inhibitor, and now you kind of probably understand why or how it works, right? So an ACE inhibitor medication for people who have high blood pressure is ACE inhibitor. Yeah, I mean, there are different brand names for it, but essentially they all do the same thing. It's going to inhibit the ACE. So by blocking the ACE, you are basically shutting down the RAS. If you're already suffering from high blood pressure, you don't want the RAS system to be active. Okay, so that's it. Now, lots of information on this chart. You can see how the quiz can be confusing. Um, and definitely study hard for it. Okay, you don't have any questions, so I have questions for you. There we go. These are really good questions to go through. Let's see. Which of the I'm not gonna do the polls, okay? Because you guys are not really participating anyways. Which of the following activities would trigger RAS? So think about it. RAS is needed to bring the blood pressure back up. Okay. The trigger for RAS is dehydration or um, blood loss, anything that would lower your blood pressure. So let's take a look at here and see which one will trigger RAS. Okay, drinking several glasses of water, that's fine. If anything, you're rehydrating yourself. That's not going to be a problem. Shoveling the driveway for an hour on cold winter days. We had those experience this past winter. The point here is like if it's a cold winter day, you're probably not going to be sweating too much. Okay, so you're not going to be dehydrated. You'll be tired, but you're not going to be dehydrated. Compared to mowing the lawn for an hour on a hot summer day, it will trigger the rest. You're not going to be like severely dehydrated, but you'll be sweating quite a bit, and that sometimes is enough to trigger the RAS. Okay, eating four slices of pizza, no problem. This is talking about the sodium in the body, right? And that's fine. Um, Sleeping, no bearing. Okay, high levels of ANH. Oh man, I'm so sorry. There are so many names for the same thing, and sometimes I get confused. This is atrial natriuretic hormone. Okay, same thing as the one I wrote in the note. Okay, peptide or hormone, the same thing. Okay. So high levels of ANH, what will it do? Okay, so first of all, you got on the test situation, like you gotta know ANH. What does it do? ANH is gonna responsible for bringing BP down. Okay. And it's going to be counteracting RAS. That's what I'm going to write down to help jog my memory. So let's see. Is ANH going to increase aldosterone? No. Aldosterone is part of the RAS. We are countering RAS. Is it going to increase blood pressure? No, I wrote it down already. It's going to decrease blood pressure, right? Don't just choose the stuff like, without thinking through them. Okay? Write it out. Okay? Decrease Na plus level in urine. Well, the name says natriuretic, right? So you increase sodium in pee. That's what it means. So that's a no-no. Increase sodium in blood. Nope, we're putting the sodium out of the blood. Answer is increase urine volume. Okay. You put the sodium in the pee, water will follow, you pee more. All right? Next. Now this one is really hard. All right? I have so hard. I have two of them for you to think about. All right. I'll teach you how to think about this. All right. So first of all, this is talking about the angiotensinogen, and then it's going to become angiotensin 1, and then angiotensin 2. All right. So what's going to happen here? What enzyme do we need to go from angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1? Yeah, that's the renin. Okay. And then what about from 1 to 2? What enzyme do we need to go from 1 to 2? Yeah, ACE. Very good. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. It's saying we have we have high renin but low ACE. Okay, what's going to happen? Well, if we have high renin, then this first reaction is going to be okay. Angiotensinogen will be converted to angiotensin number 1. Okay, so like we'll be using up the angiotensinogen. This is going to go down, and angiotensin number 1 is going to form. But because we have low levels of ACE, then the angiotensin number 1 is stuck in number 1. It cannot go to number 2 because we have low ACE. So this is going to be high, and then this is going to be low. Okay, again, renin converts the raw material into number 1, so we'll be using up the angiotensinogen. Then we'll be getting a lot of number 1, but it's not moving forward from that point. So the answer is low, high, low, which is which one is low, high, low? Part D right here. Choice number D. Do you understand? Seriously, ask me questions if you don't get it. You will have these questions on the test, on the quiz, and I don't want you to. I want you guys to do better this time. Okay? I know the test results were less than ideal, but you can do better. It's not too late to turn things around. Okay, fine. You try this one now. Okay, I will do the poll and see how many of you will get the answer. Anyone else before I close the poll? All right. So let's take a look again over here. We have, I mean, you have to write this thing out. That's why you need some papers for the quiz. And as long as you show us the notes in the end and let us see your hands, you are fine. Okay, so there we go. Let's see. Here we have low renin. That's what it says. Low renin and high AIDS. So if you have low renin, then angiotensinogen is not going to get converted into angiotensin 1, right? So this stuff is going to be high and this is going to be low. And even though we have adequate amount of A's, um, because we don't have a lot of angio number 1, it doesn't matter you have a lot of these enzymes. Like it's not coming in. You don't have enough raw material. You don't have enough reactant. So I mean, yes, it's going to get converted to number 2, but you start with so little, this is also going to be little. So the answer is high, low, low, which is B. Okay? So there are different scenarios that you can work with yourself. Like, what if they're both low? What if they're both high, right? And so on and so forth. All right, I hope that makes sense. We have one more hormone, confusing a little bit. Yeah. The second one or the first one? Or both? I guess both, right? Number 2? Okay. So let's try again. So with low amount of renin, angiotensinogen is not being converted into angiotensin number 1. So that's why we have a backlog of angiotensinogen, and then we're not getting a lot of angio 1. Most of it is stuck in the angiotensinogen form because we don't have enough renin to convert it. Okay? But what about number 2? Well, we have enough A's, we have a lot of A's, in fact, but we are not getting enough raw material for the reaction to happen. So that's why number 2 is also going to be low. I'm not making it. Okay? Because one step depends on the other step, right? Um, how do I so for example, right? You got it? Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's for other people, let's just do another example. Okay. It's like, you have the batter here, batter for making muffin, and then you're gonna bake the muffin, and then you're gonna add, I don't know, sprinkles to it or whatever. Okay. So look, you gotta bake the batter too. But let's say the oven is broken. Okay. It's not really working. So I'm not getting the muffins. I'm not creating the muffins. So it doesn't matter. Like, all the kids are already, they're so excited. They are ready to add the sprinkles, but they can't. If you don't have enough muffins, you're not going to be able to add sprinkles to anything, right? So if the first step is kind of, slowed down, the first step is the rate limiting step, it doesn't matter. You are ready to do the second step. You just don't have the raw material to do it. So you will end up having a lot of batter sitting around. You might be able to bake like a few muffins using, like a smaller oven or whatever. Yeah, you're not gonna have a lot of it, and you're not gonna have a lot of final product. I don't know if that made it worse or better, but that's what's happening. Okay. All right. Almost there. 10 more slides. Okay, next one is yet. Oh, no, we did this already. This is yeah, we did this already. Skip, 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 skip. Okay, now we have a third hormone. Between now and the end of the course, you have over 20 hormones you need to learn. Okay, so this is just a tip of the iceberg. All right. In fact, I think there is a hormone table that you can print on Luminate, and we'll fill it in as we go. Anyways, this is anti anti-diuretic hormone, ADH. Okay, what does this do? Well, diuretic means to pee. Anti-diuretic hormone is like anti-peeing. This hormone makes you pee less. Okay, pee less. Okay, I'm just gonna write it in like plain English to help you remember it better, right? So this is anti-peeing hormone. When do you want to pee less? Give me a situation where you want to pee less. That's right, dehydrated. If you're dehydrated, you don't want to pee as much. You want to conserve water, right? Okay. But you're like, I'm confused. Didn't you say dehydration is going to trigger the RAS? Yes, that's true too. Multiple things can happen at the same time in the body. You can be dehydrated, so we want to conserve water, pee less, and at the same time, you want to do all these things to help maintain the blood pressure, right? So like don't think it's either this or that. A lot of times it's like multiple things happening at the same time. Okay, so this is anti-diuretic hormone. The hormone is made in the hypothalamus, but then it's stored and released from the posterior pituitary gland. The pituitary gland, which is the thing that dangles from the hypothalamus, okay, it has an anterior portion and it has a posterior portion. The ADH, the anti-peeing hormone, is stored in the posterior pituitary gland, the PP. You remember the PP is where you store the anti-PP hormone. That's how I remember it, okay? As opposed to the AP, which is the anterior pituitary. That has a bunch of other hormones that we'll learn later, okay? So it's made in the hypothalamus, it's stored in the posterior pituitary, and it's released from there. Okay, so remember, Unit 2 test, the function of the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland is to work together to maintain homeostasis through hormonal regulation. One of the hormones is anti-diuretic hormone, ADH. So what does it do? ADH helps regulate blood osmolarity by promoting water reabsorption. You don't want to pee as much, so you want to absorb more water from the filtrate. Absorb more water from filtrate. That equals to lower urine volume. Okay. You conserve water. So the trigger for ADH, for antidiuretic hormone, the trigger is increase in blood osmolarity. When your blood gets too concentrated, it will trigger the release of ADH. And how that works is when your blood is too concentrated, the blood is hypertonic. Hypertonic. We learned about hypertonic last semester. When the environment is hypertonic, it sucks water out of the cell. And the cells in the hypothalamus will shrink. The shrinking of the hypothalamus trigger these gated channels on the surface, and that creates an action potential that goes down to the posterior pituitary gland, and it triggers the release of ADH. Okay, we'll talk about this more later, but I can quickly show you like a quick explanation. You don't really have to write this down. Okay, I'm gonna repeat this thing so many times in the coming weeks that you will memorize it later. Okay, but basically it's like this. This is the hypothalamus. And connected to the hypothalamus is the posterior pituitary and the anterior pituitary. So there are neurons. Again, you don't need to draw this. You just have to listen. Okay, we'll draw this out next time when it's more relevant. Okay, we're going to add more details to it. So these axons has the bodies in the, sorry, these neurons have their bodies in the hypothalamus, and it extends the axon all the way down to the posterior pituitary gland. So it's going to make these ADH, and the ADH will be stored at the axon terminal, just like those neurotransmitters, right? So when the hypothalamus, the cells here, the neurons, they shrink. When they shrink, it trigger an action potential that will go down the axon, and then you will release the ADH from the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so that's the relationship between the hypothalamus and the PP, the posterior pituitary. So what happens next? Well, what happens next is a couple of things. So over here we have blood osmotic pressure goes up. In other words, in simple English, the blood is too concentrated, too salty. Okay, because of, for example, excessive sweating, dehydration. Okay, please note, blood loss is not going to trigger ADH. Losing blood will trigger the RAS, but it's not going to trigger the ADH because bleeding does not change your blood concentration, right? Think about a can of Coca-Cola or something. You pour out half, the remaining half is going to taste exactly the same. In other words, like you didn't make it sweeter or like, more diluted by pouring it out. Pouring it out does not change the concentration. Similarly, losing blood is not going to change the blood concentration. Therefore, it's not going to change the osmolarity. It's not going to trigger the release of ADH. So there are osmoreceptors, which, as the name implies, they are receptors that would detect osmolarity. It's kind of like a chemoreceptor, if you would, and it would cause you to feel thirsty. When you're thirsty, you should drink water, and that should dilute the blood a little bit. Similarly, the high blood concentration will cause the cells in the hypothalamus to shrink, and then you will release ADH. And what does ADH do? Okay, you can read this stuff, but showing you a diagram is probably easier. This is the nephron again, and you can see uh, the dots, like how close they are, represent the concentration. So at the beginning of today's lesson, we learned that the solute, sorry, the osmolarity of the filtrate increases as we go down the loop of Henle. Right? You can see the dots get closer and closer together because we're absorbing water, right? In our notes, it gets like more and more yellow, darker, 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 darker. On the way up, we're gonna absorb NaCl. So going in, it was around 400. Coming back out is also around 400. Okay. So without ADH, without anti-diuretic hormones, that's it. We're not going to be absorbing any more water, and we're just going to pee this stuff out. And we are producing large volume of diluted urine. The pee that's coming out is going to be light in color, and it's going to be a lot of pee. When we are dehydrated, when we have high blood concentration and we want to conserve water, the pituitary gland, posterior pituitary gland, will release ADH. So now, instead of just going through the distal tubing and collecting down, we will absorb extra water. And the volume of urine will be reduced, and the concentration will go up. Okay. So small volume of concentrated urine. It's going to be darker in color. Okay. When you are sleeping, when you're sleeping, do you think your body secretes ADH or no? When you are sleeping, ADH or no ADH? What do you think? That's right. When you are sleeping, you will have ADH because unless you are drinking while you're sleeping, which is difficult to do, you're not drinking when you're sleeping. You're not drinking water when you're sleeping. So your body, I wouldn't say it's dehydrated, but then it's not intaking water for like 7, 8 hours, right? Or 5, 6 hours, however long you sleep, right? So your body is conserving water for you during that time. So you don't wake up to pee, number one. And number two, you help conserve the water that's in your body, right? And so in the morning, the urine is usually darker in color, okay? Because of that. Oh boy, this is a really long question. Uh, yeah, I'm gonna let you read it. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I only have two answers coming in, and it has been a minute and a half. Let's go through this together. Diuretics are drugs sometimes used to treat individuals with high blood pressure, hypertension. These drugs inhibit the reabsorption of Na ions by the loop of Henle. So right away, if I see this question, I'm gonna write down, okay, this is gonna be like the ascending limb, right? Ascending limb. Okay, that's gonna be blocked. Okay, what effect would this have on osmolarity in the nephron? Okay, so let's go back here. We are blocking the absorption of sodium on the way up. So what do you think is going to happen to this number? If we're not absorbing the sodium, then is this number going to go up or is it going to go down? Well, all these black dots are not going anywhere. If you don't absorb them back into the blood, they're not going anywhere. So this number is going to be higher. It's going to be like, 800, 900, 1,000. We don't know, right? Okay, but that's the point. So let's see. Osmolarity would be higher than normal in collecting down. Oh my God, that's exactly what we just said. So that's the answer. Okay. Let's take a look at why the other ones are not good. Osmolarity would be higher than normal in descending loop of Henle. Well, this has absolutely nothing to do with the descending loop of Henle. It has to do with the ascending loop, right? In fact, the descending loop comes before the ascending loop, ascending limb. So it's gonna have zero effect on the descending limb. Osmolarity will be lower than normal in proximal tubule. Again, that's nonsense. Proximal tubule, like it's way earlier in the nephron. It's not going to be doing anything. Right? This only affects the resorption of NaCl. in the loop of Henle in the ascending limb. Osmolarity would be lower than normal in collecting dung. Well, that doesn't make sense because you are not taking back the sodium, so it cannot be more diluted. It has to be more concentrated. Okay, so this is wrong. Okay, so I know it's not simple, but it's not impossible either. Okay, you just gotta know what goes on in which part, and so on and so forth. Okay, a couple more slides with the diseases, and we're gonna be done. Next, we have diabetes insipidus. This is not the same as what you were thinking of when you hear diabetes. Okay, the diabetes that you are probably thinking of, that's called diabetes mellitus. There's like type 1 and type 2. This is not that. This is insipidus. Okay. So in diabetes insipidus, the cells that produces ADH in the hypothalamus is destroyed. Okay. They're destroyed by the you know immune system perhaps. And without ADH, you cannot hold the water in the body. Okay. You don't have the anti-PP hormone. And if you don't anti urine, then you are always peeing. In extreme cases, for people with this condition, they produce as much as 20 liters of urine each day. That's a lot. How much blood do you have in your system? 5 to 6 liters. You're peeing out 4 or 5 times your total blood volume. Right? So they are constantly thirsty. They need to constantly be drinking, otherwise they get dehydrated and it's not good for them. They might die from it, right? So people can treat this condition by taking ADH as a supplement. All right. We're gonna quickly talk about dialysis. There are two types of kidney dialysis. When your kidneys are not working, the um, ultimate solution is to wait for a kidney transplant. But kidney is the top most needed organ when it comes to transplant. The waiting list is really, really long. And while the person is waiting for the kidney transplant, they have to rely on dialysis, okay, to help filter the blood. You cannot live without the kidneys. Okay? If you don't filter out the toxin from the blood, then they build up in the blood and you could die from toxemia. Okay, toxin that builds up in the blood. Emia is blood, right? Toxemia is toxin in the blood. So there are two types. Basically, in hemodialysis, the person would have to take the blood out of the body and will go through a dialysis machine that has solution that is designed to draw waste product out of it, and then it's going to go back into the body. Okay, so this takes some time. The person has to be at the clinic. They cannot do it at home. That's why you hear, right? Even when there's a snowstorm and TTC cancels their streetcar and everything, but they will say wheel-trans will still be operational. Wheel-trans are these services that take people to dialysis clinic. You cannot cancel those services. The people need to go to the clinic to, you know, do the dialysis. Otherwise, they would die, right? So it's an essential service. So, you sit there for, hours and they do the dialysis for you. You will also need to have some EPO in some cases because early on in lecture 2, I told you the blood cells actually get destroyed um, going through all these tubings, and you might get a little bit anemic. So the EPO will boost your red cell production. The other option for some people can be what's called a peritoneal dialysis, and they basically has a bag that pumps fluid into the abdominal cavity, and using the peritoneum, which is kind of like this membrane that is inside your gut, and it will serve as a membrane to help filter the waste product, and those fluid will drain into a bag, So of course, this is more flexible. A person is more mobile. They can go about their day. They just have to empty the bag and replace the solution regularly. So someone said, when someone has one kidney, does that affect how well the blood is filtered? Actually, no. People with one kidney uh, functions perfectly well. They are not gonna, have impaired function. Okay, so evolution has given us two kidneys, one as a backup. My grandmother lost one of her kidneys in her late 70s, okay? And now she's like 95. Okay? Virtually does not affect her bodily function at all. Diabetes mellitus, that's the diabetes that most people are familiar with, not to be confused with the insipidus that I was telling about. So in this case, it has to do with insulin. Okay, there are two types, type 1 and type 2. Am I going to talk about it now? I don't know. Let me take a look at the notes. Okay, no, we'll talk about it later. Okay. Either way, type 1 or type 2, the situation is you cannot regulate your blood sugar. Okay, because of either lack of insulin in type 1 or resistance to insulin in type 2. Okay? So for people, normal individuals, after they intake glucose, the glucose level would drop down because the insulin will help absorb the glucose into the body cells. But people with diabetes, the blood sugar will continue to go up. Okay. Normal blood sugar should be around 0.1%. That's zero point 0.1 grams for every 100 milliliters of blood. But for people with diabetics conditions, right, it could be much higher than zero point 0.1. It could go up to, 2% in some cases. Okay. So what happens to all those excess sugar? Well, let's go back to here. Uh, I mean, you don't really have to draw this. You can just kind of listen. Okay, you know this thing now. And let's say there are a lot of sugar, lots of sugar in the blood because you're not absorbing it. So all those sugar will be in the filtrate. So when it's in the filtrate, you can take them back. You can take them back with glucose transporter. Right? So you can take them back. But like I said, if all the transporters are working at full speed, then you can't take all of it back. And the glucose will continue forward in the rest of the nephron. So normally, I said the number is around 400 for osmolarity when the filtrate is coming from the proximal tubule. But because of all these excess glucose, this number is now going to be higher. So instead of 400, maybe it's going to be like 700. Okay, so what's going to happen if the number is higher? Well, if the number is higher, then compared to the surrounding, I'm not going to be able to absorb as much water. And in fact, if this first number is 700, then water is actually going to be going like the other way. Right? Water is going to be coming in for some time. Okay. So, and certainly that's going to be a problem later on in the distal tubule and the collecting duct as well. And the distal tubule and collecting duct, because of these extra sugar, okay, you're going to be drawing water from the surrounding. So it increases urine output. Okay, so people with diabetes, if they're not, treating it, they pee more than usual. And the pee will have glucose in them, higher, much higher glucose than a normal individual. Okay. And this green dots here represent glucose, but it doesn't have to be glucose. This could be caffeine. You drink coffee, goes into the nephron. You don't have transporter for caffeine. So all the caffeine stays in the filtrate and it sucks water from surrounding tissue and you pee more. That's why drinking coffee makes you pee more. Remember the story about the Red Bull? People keep on drinking a Red Bull. They have to pee. They feel thirsty. They drink more Red Bull and then they just keep on peeing, right? And they become dehydrated and some people die. Nephritis. Nephritis. Itis is inflammation. Nephritis is the inflammation of the nephron. It's not a single disease, but it's more like a secondary thing that happens as a result of other problems. Like maybe you have an infection, okay? Maybe there's some kind of toxin in the body. And in this case, nephritis makes the glomerulus extra leaky. It's already leaky, but now it's extra leaky. You know those gaps in the walls of the glomerulus. If it's nephritis, the gaps becomes really big. So now proteins is going to be leaking out, cells going to be leaking out. Right? So the person might have blood in the pee. Right? It might be red because the red cells are leaking out. Okay? There are proteins in the pee now. And remember, you don't have the mechanism to take the proteins back. So now think of the green dots as proteins. It's going to suck the water from the surrounding, and now you also pee more than you normally would. Okay. So actually, if you pee more frequently than you normally would, it's sometimes a cause for concern. Like if you're not drinking extra water, if you're not, increasing your caffeine intake or whatever, and you're peeing more often than you're not than you normally do, you know, maybe it's a sign that something is happening, okay, and you should get it checked out. This is basically what I said. And that's it. That is it. Okay. Lots of stuff, very complicated lecture. But like I said, I'll give you two attempts for the quiz. Um, when's the quiz again? Someone told me last time. Is it next Wednesday? Next Wednesday, right? I think. Yeah, next Wednesday. So you have a whole week to prepare for it. Okay. That's it, guys. Take care. See you next week.
It's only this
Number
lecture.
nine. Yeah, only this lecture. Only number nine.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
I'll
you.
post the information online. Okay, bye guys. See ya.
Thank you, sir. Bye.